Hello and welcome to Pivot Point DFS presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network, part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am your host, Keith Cork, and I am here to break down a not successful, finally a losing week. Been a few good ones in a row, but didn't win this past week in week 15. Didn't lose the whole thing, didn't lose the whole night. It just didn't hit with my main lineup. I actually made some money in the smaller contest I enter. Actually, maybe I lost a little bit there too as well, because now it's a 5 entry as opposed to a 3 entry as it usually is. I don't know why they changed that, but it seems to be the case again this week, where the screen pass I've been entering that was a 3 entry is now a 5 entry. So I've been doing 5 entries, so an extra $30 instead of the 145, 175 per week. But anyways, let's break down what happened in week 15. Like I said, not a successful week, but ultimately I don't feel too bad about the route I went to and the observations I had. Feel like we had a decent enough chance. Just didn't get on the right guys. So that's going to be the case more often than not. Of course, a vast majority of the time that's going to be the case. So I don't feel like it was a letdown week in any sense of the word, but definitely not a successful week for me here at Pivot Point DFS. Top lineups for the Spy. For the Spy, it was Jared Goff at QB, and they stacked him with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, and that was definitely a team to stack in the Lions that I didn't really consider stacking and should have, obviously. That Lions-Rams game went off for 75 total points. So definitely a good one to stack there. Woody Marks was in that lineup as well for the Spy for the other running back position. Puka Nacua was at wide receiver, which was over 50% owned, but ended up being a good play. He had an amazing week this week as well. Really helped me in best ball, hopefully to advance a few of my teams there in best ball. At tight end, we had Juwan Johnson, who's a name we might be considering this week. Let's take a look. And then Colby Parkinson, so a double tight end lineup here. And obviously that Colby Parkinson had a massive game with 2 touchdowns in this one in week 15. On Thursday Night Football, Colby Parkinson didn't really do jack squattery. He had like 2 catches for like, 20 yards or something like that. He really didn't do anything at all. The Bears defense was the defense of choice here in the Spy lineup. In the screen pass lineup, Trevor Lawrence was the QB, so this was a Jacksonville stack with Travis Etienne and BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. I don't think, we did not have a bring back in this lineup. The other running back here was also Woody Marks. He was very highly owned in both contests, and ended up interestingly enough, he had that offensive fumble recovery touchdown as opposed to a rushing touchdown, which I take umbrage with. I don't know. I guess you could say it wasn't intended for it to be snapped directly to him, but really, who's to say, right? I think I would have given him a rushing touchdown either way. But this lineup also, for whatever reason, had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. So I had 2 wide receivers from Detroit with no stack with Jared Goff. Go figure. Trevor Lawrence was had an absolutely amazing, fantastic game. He had 5 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown in this game. So ended up putting up 47.3 DK points on 5.7K salary. Goff, for his part, did 28.52 on 6.1K salary. So, having Lawrence here helped the screen pass lineup. But it's funny enough, actually, the Spy lineup that won the contest actually outscored the screen pass lineup. So, go figure that one. Maybe part of that was because they had Dalton Kincaid as their tight end in the screen pass lineup over here. And then Darius Slayton in their flex, which really didn't do a whole lot for them either. And then there was the Bears defense again against that Browns offense, which, I understand playing that. Me, I'm going to spend down at defense. They got 18 points. I believe my defense ended up getting, 7 points, something like that. We'll take a look here in a minute. But at the comparative salaries, I don't think it's really much of a – unless the defense goes off for, 25, 30 points, which is possible, but very rare. not really much of a advantage to have a certain defense over another. We just don't want to go negative. Here is a chalk from week 15 at the running back position. It was Woody Marks at the very top, 52.16%, so over half the field. That's from these. This is from the SPY. You see there's slightly different numbers in the screen pass. I've taken to just looking at the SPY when I can. Sometimes I do look at the screen pass, but they're pretty comparable. It was like 47% owned in the screen pass, so it was very, very similar. Travis Etienne was nearly 27% owned as the second most owned running back, and then Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, Corey Krosky-Merritt, which we'll talk about in a minute here, Devin Neal, and Saquon Barkley round out the top running backs. But yeah, Corey Krosky-Merritt. I was actually out traveling. I was with my kids. Every day is just like it's Christmas time and too much is happening. So I don't remember what we were doing, but out with my kids, got that news. Tried to swap him into a few lineups. He ended up doing pretty well, 15.60K points on 4.4K salary. But we got the news that Chris Rodriguez was out. I was definitely expecting Chris Rodriguez to play, so that was a bit of a wrench into things, and it definitely changed the slate because we didn't have a lot of value on the slate, at least not apparent value. So it was really a big news moment that again changed just kind of like the whole makeup of this slate. So not being able to, really sit and think it through, probably didn't do me any help. But it also didn't really hurt me because Corey Krosky-Merritt didn't go crazy or anything like that, which, he's still Bill. He's not going to go absolutely disgustingly crazy. I feel okay with where I ended up with my lineups. At the QB position, Jackson Dart was the most owned, followed by Marcus Mariota, Lamar Jackson, and Matthew Stafford. And then the ownership dropped off after that. All those guys double-digit owned or higher. Pretty concentrated QB ownership this week compared to what I expect this week. I expect some pretty flat ownership at the QB position, which is pretty interesting. Maybe just one or two guys at the top. And then for the running back position, we also have pretty concentrated ownership as well. So, chalk this week was honestly a little bit easier to read than it was in previous weeks. Wide receivers, we had Puka Nacua at the top, over 50% owned. We had Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, Jameson Williams, Mitchell Tinsley. Oh, man, that one hurts. That was one of my, strong plays there, one of my core plays, if you will. Had him in basically every lineup. Absolutely crap the bed. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Wan'Dale Robinson, Nico Collins, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Juwan Jennings, and Devontae Adams rounds out the whole top there. And with my Rams lineups, I was stacking with Devontae Adams over Puka Nacua. And obviously, Devontae Adams had to leave with that injury. So that was really a bummer. Didn't do me any help at all. That's just the name of the game. Sometimes that happens. At the tight end position, we had Harold Fannin Jr., 27% owned, quite highly owned. Isaiah Likely, almost 25%, almost a quarter of the field had Isaiah Likely, and he put up a 0. That juicy matchup against the Bengals, right? That's what we want. Bengals suck against tight ends. I don't believe I actually had Isaiah Likely or Mark Andrews in any lineups, so I didn't fall for it. But I very well could have. There wasn't a good reason for me to fade those guys. I just ended up not going to him. Theo Johnson was next. George Kittle had a good day, and he was after that. Mark Andrews after that, and then Mike Gesicki rounded out the top-owned tight ends. All those guys, double-digit ownership, and pretty concentrated ownership of the tight ends as well. I would say, wide receiver, probably the flattest of the ownerships, but it was still pretty concentrated there as well. So, really, it was, ownership was pretty skewed towards those guys. So, 3 out of 4 of the top-owned QBs hit 3x value. That's compared to 2 out of 3 last week. 2 out of 8 of the top-owned RBs hit 3x value. That's compared to 1 out of 8 last week. And that's kind of a trend we've been seeing. Pretty low on the running backs that have been chalk hitting 3x value. 6 out of the 11 of the top owned wide receivers, though, hit 3x value, and that's 4 out of 9 last week. So wide receivers, chalky wide receivers have been hitting pretty frequently. 2 out of 6 of the top owned tight ends hit 3x value compared to 3 out of 5 last week. That's 44.8% of the top 29 picks had 3x value. Last week was 25 picks, and it was 40%. So definitely more of a chalky week. Not the worst we've seen in terms of, chalk really hitting, but better than we have been getting recently, right? A couple weeks ago, it was like no chalk hit. We're starting to reestablish our confidence in the chalk. I think a big part of that also is like Ja'Cory Cross-Merit. So we always want to have like some context with these numbers, not just have numbers in a box. So Ja'Cory Cross-Merit, becoming obvious and clear value was one of the 8, RBs that hit 3x value. So that helped obviously with the percentage there. And then for the wide receivers, if we go back, we had, Puka obviously hit 3x value. We had Jameson Williams hit 3x value. Amon-Ra hit 3x value. And those were pretty highly owned wide receivers. So just, targeting that game worked out for people. And then Juwan Jennings was pretty popular as well. And one of the guys I tried to fade, but he ended up hitting as well. But it was, concentration was there again on picks. Not quite as severe, I guess, when we're really looking at it compared to the week before, to week 14. But it was still pretty concentrated, and the chalk hit at a better rate. My chalk calls: Matthew Stafford, yes, he was chalk. Lamar Jackson, yes. Jackson Dart, yes. CJ Stroud, no. CJ Stroud was only 8.22%, but he was the 5th most highest owned QB. Just kind of a drop off from Marcus Mariota, who was chalk. I believe he was the bottom of it, or maybe it was Lamar. One of those, whoever was the bottom, or no, I think it was Stafford, right? We looked at Stafford. Stafford was the least owned of the chalk QBs. I think he was roughly 10%. So it was just a bit of a drop off down to CJ Stroud, who was 8.22%. Christian McCaffrey, yes, he was chalk. Jahmyr Gibbs, yes. Derrick Henry, yes. Saquon Barkley, yes. Ashton Jeanty, no. 4.02%. If you recall in the podcast, last week I said, I didn't really believe that was going to be chalk, and I didn't really stick to my guns on that. I should have just sworn him off there and just said, you know what, he's not going to be chalk. It didn't really matter in the end because he didn't do anything. The Raiders are just a broken team right now. I can't trust Jeanty. If you can, more power to you. He should be pretty contrarian on any slate going forward. But not something I'm interested in entertaining personally. So, but he was definitely not chalk on that slate. Woody Marks, yes, of course, he was chalk. JCM, it's interesting. I wonder if the JCM thing didn't happen, if Chris Rodriguez doesn't get ruled out, I wonder if Jeanty gets a little bit higher percentage, because he wasn't exactly the same price as him, but definitely a lower priced option for people. So maybe that did affect things. I'm not sure. There's no way for me to know for sure, obviously. Puka Nacua was chalk, yes. Jackson Smith-Njigba, yes. Jamar Chase, yes. Amon-Ra St. Brown, yes. I mean, this is very easy calls, right? These are all the top wide receivers in the league, and there was definitely some a little bit of value there that you can get them pretty easily. Nico Collins, yes. Wanda Robinson, yes. And Juwan Jennings, yes. Those were all chalk plays. Called them correctly. George Kittle, yes. Harold Fannin Jr., yes. Mark Andrews, yes. And Theo Johnson, yes. So very good day or week in calling chalk. My only kind of flub there was the Ashton Jeanty call, which I didn't feel comfortable with to begin with. So probably should have just omitted that one and just said, you know what, I'm not going to be calling this guy chalk. But it didn't matter in the end because I didn't play him. He didn't go off or anything like that. So all in all, not really that big of a deal. My top plays for the week. Matt Stafford was 10.2% owned. He hit 3.66 value, 24.92 fantasy points, and 7K salary. Yeah, that'll do it for us. That's pretty good. Didn't reach Jared Goff levels. Didn't reach, obviously, Trevor Lawrence levels. Trevor Lawrence was really the guy you wanted to have. But still, you could definitely cash with Matt Stafford. It was a good call. Christian McCaffrey, 14.5% owned. 1.7x value, 15.7 fantasy points on 9K salary. That's not going to do it for us. Not good. Woody Marks was 52.2% owned, so very highly owned. 1.9x value, 10.8 fantasy points on 5.6K salary. Not bad, not good. As you saw, he was in the 2 winning lineups I showed you guys. So it's not like he sunk anybody, but he definitely didn't help matters. And then Mitchell Tinsley, yeah, this was a terrible call. 20.2% owned. So he was pretty highly owned. 0.8x value, 2.6 fantasy points on 3.1K salary. Didn't sink you. Just because you played Mitchell Tinsley would not, would not mean that you missed the cash line by any means, or you may have even placed somewhat highly with him because he was only 3.1K. He was 20.2% owned, so 1 in 5 teams had him anyways. So really, it didn't matter if he busted out. But at the end of the day, definitely could have done something. There was a more optimal way to use that cash, use that salary. Now, this is where it gets kind of funky and funny, I guess. But the key pivots that I used this week, there was one key pivot. I used Terry McLaurin. He was 21.9% owned. He hit 2.9x value at 15.9 fantasy points on 5.4K salary. Didn't do great, didn't do bad. There were some pivots on my list that I should have played for sure. And there were some pivots that were not so great calls, and I just didn't play a whole lot of them. I went pretty chalky, or I went very contrarian. I got in that big kick, as you guys recall, a couple pods in a row, and I've talked about it, where I said the chalk's really shaky. We need to get really different if we want to try to take down the top prize. So that is what I did here. You'll see what I did. That is what I did. But the chalk, I played this, and this was probably my preferred lineup, and this did hit. Those guys did hit. The money line. Didn't hit for big money, though. The min cash line in the SPY was 155.12 compared to 148.56 last week, so it did go up. Not the highest we've seen by far, but pretty high. I mean, relatively high, middle of the pack, basically. Screen pass was 154, so very, very similar. And yeah, so I leaned hard into stacking, which was totally the right move, but I just did the wrong teams, right? If I had stacked the Lions or if I had stacked the Jaguars, we'd be sitting in a very different spot right now. Those teams never really crossed my mind, so I'm not too upset that I missed out on them. The teams I did stack did end up doing just fine, honestly. So I'm not too worried about it. JCN becoming chalk when Chris Rodriguez was ruled out, it fundamentally changed this game. That's true. And that was a big reason why none of my pivots made it into the lineups. I had some of them that I swapped off of for JCM. So probably would have been a couple more names on there had JCM not opened up as an obvious value play. And I could have used that Stafford lineup as my main lineup in my single entry, and I probably would have hit the money line. I think I would have hit, maybe made $150 or $200 on my $100 single entry. But I'm not interested in cashing at this time. At this time, we are near the end, guys. It is week 16. We have 16, 17, 18. We have 3 weeks, and really just 2 weeks of normal football, and then week 18 is just going to be complete chaos. So good luck with that. I will be playing, but I'm going to be considerably less confident in anything when it comes to week 18. So we are near the very, very end, the nitty gritty, and we need to hit that big payday. I feel really good about this slate. Best I've felt in 3 slates now. So I think, there's an opportunity this week, but we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, at the moment, I'm just loving what I'm seeing out of the plays that I like compared to what the field likes and where that stands. So here's what I did last week, though. So in my SPY lineup, I ended up going with a CJ Stroud stack with Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz. As you can see, that stack did phenomenally. I got 46, 47, 48, 68, almost 69 points. Nice. Almost 69 points from my stack. And my defense, as I told you guys, going with a value defense, I got 13 points out of the Chargers at 2.5K. The Bears were in the winning lineups. So I think they were 3.5K, something like that. and they end up getting 18 points, so an extra 5 points. I mean, I didn't look at the Millie Maker lineup that won this week, but I would have to assume the Bears probably weren't in there. It was probably a cheaper. It might have even been the Chargers. So I'm not too upset about those. It's just that every other play I had busted. Jahmyr Gibbs did nothing. He had 9.8 points on 8.8K salary. Absolutely sunk me. Mitchell Tinsley did nothing. We already talked about that, but he did nothing. Michael Wilson had a decent game. He got that touchdown, which really helped out matters. 16.4 DK points on 6.6K salary. So he didn't sink me by any means. He was an okay play. Wasn't fantastic. Woody Marks, as mentioned, did okay. Was expecting a bit more. Didn't happen. And Derrick Henry ended up with in this lineup, and he was 20% owned. Wish I would have went somewhere else. He had 13 DK points on 7.3K salary. Honestly, not a bad game from him, though. 100 rushing yards is pretty good for Derrick Henry these days. It's just no touchdowns. If he would have gotten a touchdown or two, I may have been cashed. Right? What the bin cash was about 20 more points. So I guess I don't if he does, but maybe if he gets 2 touchdowns, I'm close. I'm like right up there, right? I'm like 10 points away. So ultimately, though, didn't cut the mustard, didn't fit the bill. So miss from me, but I did like that Stroud, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz stack. Again, did great. It's just, the salary I had to spend in that compared to some of the other stacks that went off. I mean, they just got a ton of points. So the ceiling was just so high on some of these lineups. Like we see that, the top lineups got 215 points, right? And the cash line was like 155. So it's a 60-point gap there. It's not a lot. But kind of a limited pool of players that you had to have to get to that absolute ceiling game. For my screen pass, I ended up hitting with 3 different lineups, actually. I had 3 lineups that hit, so I made $90 out of the 75 I put in. So yeah, I did win some money there. Because it's 3, 45, 60, $75. Yep, $75 in for the 5 $15 entries, and then I ended up winning 90. So I won $15 in that contest. And here's the lineup I would have had in the single entry if I was just if it was earlier in the season. I was just worried about, okay, I have to put a good lineup out there and really build my bankroll. And it was Matt Stafford, Woody Marks. These are all basically all of the chalk plays I was saying, the plays that I consider strong plays. Matt Stafford, Woody Marks, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt did end up in this lineup, so I ended up swapping him in. Amon-Ra St. Brown was in this lineup. Devontae Adams, Mitchell Tinsley, of course. Colby Parkinson also went off at 3,200, so that was a good call as well. Christian McCaffrey didn't really do much, but 15.7 points is okay for a floor. It's not going to sink you. So, and then the Chargers defense. So I ended up getting 162.62 out of this lineup. And that would have been enough to at least min cash, probably just min cash in the SPY, but didn't want to do that. So ultimately on the week, I lost $85. Made 15 on this contest, lost 100 in the other one. So yeah, $85 down. Overall, I am still at plus 325. So we are still now we're putting in 175 a week. So we're a little less than 2 weeks of payments of entry fees being covered here, but we are basically free to go until almost the end of the season, which is nice. Shouldn't lose a whole bank load. Hopefully won't lose anything. Hopefully that big hit is just around the corner for us, because I would really love that. I know we're all feeling it this holiday season. Just me? No? Yes? No? Anywho, let's talk us about the Week 16 slate, which, like I said, I feel really good about this one. I think I've got some pretty unique stands-on players that are going to set me apart from the field, which is what I've struggled with the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, I've really been like, okay, the chalk is a chalk, and it's really difficult to figure out what other directions we're going to go. But this week, I feel almost completely the opposite. I'm like, okay, what am I missing? Why are these guys chalk and the guys that I like are not? So a little bit perplexing, but that to me that means we have a lot of opportunity, because if I'm right and the rest of the field is wrong, then we come out ahead, right? We come out ahead and we have quite a bit of leverage on the field. I don't have a lot of chalk calls this week, but I do want to run through them. At the QB position, we do have CJ Stroud, I believe, is going to be pretty highly owned. I was on him last week. Probably not going to end up on him this week, but they are playing the Raiders. Very easy matchup. I mentioned, sorry, did that again. Didn't share my screen. When will I ever learn? It's been what? This is week 16, so it's been what, 2.5 months? Still haven't learned? 3.5 months. Can't even math. Anyways, CJ Stroud probably going to be pretty highly owned on this slate, and they're going against the Raiders, so that's a big part of it. Been playing very well recently, as we can see here in his game logs. 23.4. Actually, I'm incorrect here. He hasn't been playing very well recently. A 12.6 the week before that. So, but still, they've been winning basketball games. Wow, my brain. They've been winning football games. 3 wins in a row for this Houston team. They are in the up and up. I think he's a strong play. I don't have an issue with CJ Stroud. Like I said, I think I probably end up with like one CJ Stroud lineup. I do want to run one of them out there because I have a stand on one of his wide receivers I think is going to go under-owned. And, of course, it is a good matchup. But I want nothing to do with Woody Marks again. I don't really think Nico Collins is a strong play in this one. So, not going to be my favorite play, but I could definitely see myself getting there in one lineup. I do like Dalton Schultz still. I think it's a strong play as well. Jacoby Brissett is the other QB. I think is going to be pretty highly owned. And, they're going against the Atlanta Falcons, who have struggled defensively. Brissett's just been, he's dropping back and passing every play. 40 attempts, 44 attempts, 40 attempts, 49, 57, 44. That kind of volume is very hard to come by. And he's still 5.3K. I don't get this pricing, DK. I don't get it. It's very obvious value, so I can't hate it. My only issue with this is, who do you stack him with? Because I don't like Michael Wilson at 6.9K, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. most likely going to be playing. He's questionable, but telling reporters he's going to play. And I don't like Marvin Harrison Jr. coming back from an injury. And he's been in and out of the lineup. Let's see, he's played, 2 out of the last 4 weeks, if I'm seeing this correctly. So do we really trust him to have a full workload? And anyone beyond him is pretty much unusable. And then you've got Trey McBride, who's 7.6K. So, if you're going to play Jacoby Brissett, I guess just play him naked. But I think in that case, you just want to have a different QB. So, I'll be honest, this is a clear fade for me. I hope most of the field goes here, because then they're going to stack him with somebody that's going to be less than ideal. And that's going to be huge for us. Huge for me. Give me a lot of leverage. So, he'll be chalk. I don't want any part of it, really. At the running back position, Devon Achane will still draw some ownership. It'll probably be less than the other top-owned running backs, but he is still going to be pretty highly sought after, and it makes sense, right? He's been involved not only in the rushing game, but also the passing game. That fell off for a few weeks, but we always knew that was going to come back. If you look at the game logs before that, it was always a big part of his game. So kind of inexplicable how that fell off for a couple of weeks. But didn't even reach the end zone last week and still scored 18.7 DK points. So, and he gets Cincinnati now. So, yeah, I get it. My only issue here is the price tag. I think it's going to be everyone's issue because you have Bijan, you have just so many options that look great, which we'll talk about. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and they're all just slightly cheaper. James Cook, just slightly cheaper. So I get it. I think it's a good pivot because I think, you might get like 20% Bijan, 20%, 25% Jahmyr Gibbs, and then Devon's going to be like 15 to 20. So he'll be a little bit under compared to those guys. So if he outscores them by, 5 points, 4 or 5 points, then it makes sense. Assuming, depending on what else you can get in your lineup. So, but as I was saying, Bijan Robinson most likely going to be chalk again as well. And yeah, it makes total sense. They're playing the Cardinals. Despite the fact that the Cardinals throw the ball a lot, the Cardinals lose a lot too. If we go back to their game logs again, they're losing by 20. There's the 3-point loss, but like 20 points, most of these losses, just about. So they're not even like super competitive. And, the Falcons are definitely a better football team than the Cardinals, for sure. They're out of the playoffs now. No hope as far as that goes. But, football, they play through the whistle, right? They're going to keep playing. Not too worried about it. So Bijan at 8.7K makes a lot of sense. If I can get to him, I'm totally fine with that. A guy like slightly better though, and he's a slightly less expensive, but I just like him. I love the matchup. I think there's a huge advantage here against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but Jahmyr Gibbs at 8.5K, it's like there's a pattern here, right? Big score, low score, big score, low score, big score, low score. He just had a low score. But really, it's all about the matchup, right? We can't really read too much into this. But I would have to guess he has a really good chance of reaching the end zone in this one. 9.8 points last week, so some of that ownership will come off of him. So that also makes him a little bit more appealing to me. I had him last week. He let me down, but that's not a big deal. I'll still go back to him anytime. That's what you got to be in this game. You can't flip-flop. You can't be like that. You have to understand that ownership leverage is very important. So Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely on the table here. James Cook, as I mentioned before, definitely on the table as well and going to be chalky. Really, these are the top owned guys. They're going to be highly owned. So people are wanting to spend up at running back. You were able to because there's some pretty good cheap wide receivers on the board that are almost feel like free squares. So James Cook, yeah, coming off a big week himself, but that really doesn't matter. Gets the Browns. And, it's not a great matchup. It is the Browns. And that'll keep some of the ownership down. But, James Cook's really dependent on the touchdowns. And there's definitely going to be some opportunities here for the Bills to score in the red zone against this Cleveland Browns team. So, and yeah, they don't have anything on the line here. And obviously neither do the eliminated Browns. But still, Josh Allen has MVP on mine. I still say that. So I think James Cook is fine. I'm not like over the moon on him. He's okay. He's a fine play. And then Javonte Williams is going to be chalk, and I'm not totally on board with this. He's 6.4K. It's not a bad salary. Dallas technically still in the playoff hunt. If they win, they have a roughly 2% chance to make the playoffs. So there's that. Definitely a Chargers team that's been reeling on both sides of the ball. So not like a difficult matchup here. Kind of middle of the pack. But he's been pretty underwhelming for weeks now. Definitely months. I will say in his general price range, there's a few people I do like, but it's not like there's an obvious, like, I got to play this guy over Javonte Williams. I mean, we'll talk about Chris Olave. I like a whole lot, but obviously that's a flex play. Jameson Williams, I like. But I don't like, for instance, Rio Dowdle over him, who's 6.3K. I don't really like RJ Harvey here, who's 6.2K. Bucky Irving, 6.7K. I'm not enamored with him either. So not a lot of options around him in that price point. So that makes him, have some kind of value at least. So those are the running backs. I think it'll be chalk this week. Pretty easy to call. The wide receivers are also going to be a lot of the top names, but it's going to be Jamar Chase going against Miami. Let's see. I do believe Miami's been eliminated. Obviously, Cincinnati's been eliminated as well, so really nothing on the line here except for pride. But yeah, I do think Jamar Chase is going to be pretty highly owned. I mean, I can't ever go against that. Burrow's going to be playing, they said, the rest of the season. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, you don't want to play one just kind of note here and caveat. You don't want to play Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs in the same lineup. I mean, it can work out for you if this game goes absolutely bonkers. In that case, you definitely want to run back, and there is a good one in this game. But I would just say, doing single entries and 3 entries or whatever, 5 entries, there's no reason to go that route. You don't want to stack those guys. So either Amon-Ra or Jahmyr Gibbs. And I like Jahmyr Gibbs so much that I'm probably not going to end up with too much Amon-Ra. Chris Olave. 6.5K. I mean, it's the Jets. There's no Vele. Tipton, I believe, is going to play. He's questionable. Missed practice. I mean, if he doesn't play, it looks even better, but I'm pretty sure Tipton's going to play. So I'm not too worried about that. But even so, it's a good spot for Olave. Tyler Shuck has really started to come on and starting to play really fantastic football. And, the dropbacks and the pass temp numbers here are not too shabby. We compare him to Jacoby Brissett, who's in the 40s. He's not that level, of course. But 32, 20, 38, 43. Outside of that 20 against Tampa Bay, where they did win. 32 plus pass attempts. That's pretty darn good. And he's completing them at a high percentage, and he's putting up big yards. And people in New Orleans are excited about this guy. I talked to a fan or two who are really excited about Tyler Shuck. I think he's okay. I don't think he's fantastic, but it's the Jets. Another broken team. It's a great matchup. So I do like Chris Olave. Jameson Williams, I already said I like him. If you're not going to play Amon-Ra, or if you're going to stack this game heavily, that's where I would go. You're not going to play Jahmyr Gibbs, or you're not going to play Amon-Ra. You can play JMO as a one-off for sure. Definitely boom or bust compared to an Amon-Ra St. Brown, but the pricing reflects that, right? He's only 6.4K. And he's been boom for more often than not, more often than bust over the last 2 months, basically. Very slow start to the season, though. Cortland Sutton is going to be chalk. And I don't see it, honestly. People seem to be high on this. Denver had a big game last week against the Packers, and it was impressive for sure. But they've been up and down all season. I don't know if I can trust that. So I'm probably not as much on the Cortland Sutton train as other people. And Sean Payton, I just can't trust anything that guy says or does. It's very difficult to read what's going to happen in a game. Sean Payton, which probably helps out, in real life football, trying to win football games. But for our purposes of trying to figure out what to do in fantasy and DFS, it's not helpful. And then we have a pricing issue. So this is a big, just general note on this slate. DK Metcalf is only 5.4K. On FanDuel, he's like mid 7K. Only got 3 targets last week. Scored a touchdown, had a nice lawn reception. 12 targets that week before that. And they're up against the Lions. And we know the Lions put up lots of points. And they're going to do that against this Pittsburgh defense. We also know that Detroit Lions secondary is banged up and not very good. Very depleted secondary in Detroit. It's been one that's been popular to attack for weeks now. DK Metcalf at 5.4K seems like a misprice. He should be several hundred dollars more. Now, you want to argue against it, you want to play devil's advocate. Aaron Rodgers is throwing to him. A banged up Aaron Rodgers at that. Looked good last week. No guarantee it's going to happen again. But I'd be on board with that DK Metcalf play for sure. Game script works out, price works out. Nobody in that price range is going to have the opportunity like DK Metcalf. If you just look at the wide receivers around 5.4K, you're talking about BTJ, you're talking about Chris Godwin, Troy Franklin. Garrett Wilson's not going to play the rest of the season. Jacoby Myers against Denver, though. Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, there's nobody around him. He sticks out like a sore thumb in this price range. At the tight end position, of course, we know that people are going to play Kyle Pitts at 5K, and they're not even going to think about how Drake London is supposed to play in this game. Expected to play. I'd be wary. I'd be very, very wary about this. I don't think it's a bad play. I think Kyle Pitts is still going to get plenty of work. He's still going to get plenty of looks from Kirk Cousins. And I do have interest in stacking Kirk Cousins and Drake London and Kyle Pitts in this game against Arizona because, as you saw, Arizona's given up 40-plus points pretty regularly. So if Atlanta can put up that many points and it's not Bijan Robinson, who's it going to be? It's going to be Kyle Pitts. It's going to be Drake London. So there's a world where it works out, but I'd be very wary. I don't like him as a one-off necessarily. Travis Kelce gets a great matchup and against Tennessee Titans. And there is no Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is going to be out this week. So Kelce looks like a decent play. 4.7K. Gardner Minshew's the QB who has his limitations, to be sure. But his limitations are really more having to do with his shots downfield, where he just lets it rip and doesn't see the defense and throws the ball away. That really doesn't affect Kelce. The underwork with Minshew should be safe. So I'm okay with Kelce. I don't think it's like fantastic play, but I think it's a good play. It's fine. Harold Fannin Jr., of course, 4.5K. Against Buffalo, it's not great. He's very clearly Shedeur Sanders' guy for whatever reason. 14 targets, 11 targets last 2 games. It's okay. I like Kelsey more. It's $200 price difference, so if you have to save that $200, I'm okay going with Fannin, but I like Kelsey more. I like Pitts more, of course. It's $500 more for Pitts, though. And then, of course, Cincinnati, we target them at the tight end position. Darren Waller, going to be chalky here. 3,500 after a big week 15. And look, the ceiling is definitely there. Touchdown targets galore for this guy. It's not Tua, though. It's Ewers throwing to him. It could go very badly. Ewers could suck very badly. A lot of people think that's going to be the case. And Waller's not on the field the whole game. He doesn't play every snap. Not even close. So again, I'd be wary. I'd be very, very wary. Upside play, sure. I don't want any part of it, personally. Nope. No part of it. So that's going to be the chalk. Who are the pivots that I'm targeting that I don't think other people are going to be necessarily playing? Already mentioned him, already talked about him, but at QB, I could not live without Tyler Shuck. Guy's been playing well. He's been showcasing his athleticism, his ability to rush the ball. Let's see, on the ground, he's had 55 yards in the last 2 games, so 87 yards and 15 attempts in the last 2 games with a 34-yard run and a 2 rushing touchdown game under his belt. Up against the New York Jets. I don't know why this guy's not chalky. Probably should be. So this is one of those head scratchers where I'm like, what am I seeing? What am I missing? I'm getting great results with Tyler Shuck stacks with Chris Olave and someone else I'll mention a little later on. At QB, also mentioned his name already in this podcast, but I cannot get me enough. I cannot live without Kirk Cousins. Again, if I'm not playing Bijan Robinson, stacking Drake London and Kyle Pitts with Kirk, you don't have to have a bring back from Arizona. If you do, Michael Carter, 5.4K, no Zonovan Knight. DeMercado's really just a pass-catching running back, though he might have the more explosive upside. Carter probably has a safer floor. Not a great bring back here, but I do like that stack from Atlanta. And then another guy I'm totally okay playing is Gardner Minshew. He's only 4.5K. We've seen this guy before in Indianapolis absolutely huck the ball, chuck it down the field. -1 points last week, -0.3. I don't care. Don't care what he's done this season. He has barely had a chance to play. We've seen what this guy has in the past. Might he throw some interceptions? Probably. He'll probably throw at least 1. Maybe 4 with Gardner Minshew. You never know. But it's against Tennessee. Fantastic matchup here. Fantastic price tag. I'm at least going to have 1 Kansas City stack because I like some of the wide receivers also with no Rashee Rice. And I like Travis Kelce just fine with no Rashee Rice. So I like Gardner Minshew. A running back, perpetual guy on my list of first chalk, and now he's a pivot because he's been playing like absolute crap. But it's Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins. Hard name to say. Judkins for the Browns. Been playing absolutely terrible, but they're getting back their right guard, Wyatt Teller, and their center, Joel Bitonios. I think so I say his name. But they're getting back some offensive linemen, which is going to be huge for this run game, right? Very underlooked, very overlooked. I think this is a big pivot for the week. And this is a guy that you're going to want to play because people aren't really aware of the situation. They're just going to look at the box score. They're going to see, oh, man, this guy's getting 1.8 yards per carry, 1.9 yards per carry. Holy crap. No way I'm playing this guy at 6K. Pricing is kind of pricing him out. It is a little high. No doubt about it. I love it. This is exactly the kind of opportunity you want in a GPP. Ownership's going to be single digits. You run on Buffalo. We know this. You can run. You should run on Buffalo. Dylan Sampson's still out. And really nobody else to compete with him. Smash. This is a smash. Nobody else is seeing it. It's a smash. Telling you guys right now. Aaron Jones on the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go under-owned as well compared to what he's going to produce. 5.2K. Again, going up against the Giants, I mean, it's a fantastic matchup. Best matchup you can possibly have, basically. And, hasn't produced a lot recently. It's just like the Quinshon Judkins call. One of these two guys is probably going to go off. Maybe it's Jordan Mason, who's, for whatever reason, the same exact price. I can't go with the backup over the starter at the same exact price. I mean, floor just seems a lot safer with Aaron Jones. I know Jordan Mason can certainly put up big numbers, and if Aaron Jones pulls a hammy or something like that, then Jordan Mason might go absolutely crazy. But it's a great matchup. Going to go under-owned because if he hasn't been doing a whole lot. Vikings out of the playoff picture. Kind of a forgotten team. So I like Aaron Jones a lot. Kenneth Gainwell for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do want to play a lot of DK Metcalf, so I probably don't get to a lot of Kenneth Gainwell. But we see the workload last week, and we see the success they had, and we see the winning score. Things that make you go, It's contrarian. It's Detroit. You want to attack their secondary. You don't want to necessarily run the ball against them. So it is contrarian. But he is also a pass-catching back. 7 receptions, 6 receptions in the last 2 weeks. So I think Gainwell's a really nice play. It's going to go overlooked. Gosh, underowned, overlooked. Underowned and overlooked. There you go. I don't like the price, but Audric Estime at 5K is interesting for sure. No Devin Neal, no Alvin Kamara. The other back is Evan Hall. Should be the Audric Estime show here for New Orleans. Great matchup against the Jets. We've seen what this guy can do in the past with Denver when given the opportunity, and looked pretty good. Preseason games and whatnot. He can do it all. 3 down back. Only thing I don't love is the price tag. I wish he was like 4.5K or something like that, right? If he was like 4.3K, that'd be fantastic, but not the case. He's 5K. And then David Montgomery, if you're not going to play Jahmyr Gibbs, still you want to get a part of that game and you want to get a part of that backfield that's going to run against the Steelers because that's what you do. David Montgomery, could it be the week that he has another explosion? He hasn't had one since week 3. Week 5 was a nice week. but not quite as nice. So it's been quite a while since we've seen David Montgomery have a big one. This could be it against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. A lot on the line in this game. If the Tigers win, If the Lions, I'm mixing up all my sports today. If the Lions win, they have a 45% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, it's only 13. So a lot on the line for the Lions. I know a lot of people are aware of that, but just want to go ahead and put some numbers to it. On the other side, for Pittsburgh, if they win, it's a 77% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, it's a 55% chance. So a lot in line for both of these teams, which is why people are targeting this game. But I think David Montgomery is an overly piece of it for sure. At the wide receiver spot, I like me some Mike Evans. I like me some Tampa Bay Buccaneers in general. This is a team that is getting no love. I've said before, we want to respect the run defense of the Carolina Panthers, so attack him in the air. Mike Evans comes back from a lengthy injury. What was it, a collarbone or something like that? I can't remember what the injury was exactly. Actually, I can tell you here if I just look, couldn't I? Collarbone, yeah. Comes back from a collarbone injury. Just immediately steps in and catches 6 passes for 132 yards. Absolute money this guy is. Just an incredible wide receiver. And the Buccaneers need that. Buccaneers, if they win, are a 96% chance to make playoffs. So they basically seal the deal if they win against the Panthers this week, which should be doable, right? If they lose, they're a 59% chance to make the playoffs. So I like Mike Evans here as an underowned guy. I should get a share or two of him. Justin Jefferson, I almost want to remove him from this list because this is like on everybody's, oh my gosh, no one's going to have him list, which makes me think he's going to be overowned compared to what the risk is here, because there is considerable risk. Because, he had quite a few balls drop off his hand last week. They were trying to get him involved. He almost had a touchdown grab as well, which he just could not bring in, could not reel it in. It's like he's got the yips or something. Like, I don't know what happened. There's a disconnect between him and McCarthy. So, definitely a lot of risk associated with this, but he's still Justin Jefferson. You still saw, earlier in the season, he could produce, and even produced in games with J.J. McCarthy. So, all hope is not lost. It's just risky for sure. Keenan Allen, probably not going to be super duper highly owned. There he is. But Quinton Johnston is questionable for this one. If he sits, obviously we'll like it a whole lot more. Obviously we're touchdown dependent here, but it's the Dallas defense, which, Dallas defense looked good for like 2 weeks, and then it went back to being pretty darn bad. So it's a good matchup as well. Jaden Higgins. I told you somebody on the Houston Rockets. Jeez, every sport. Why don't we talk about all the sports? On the Houston Texans, there's a wide receiver I told you that I liked better than Nico Collins. It's Jaden Higgins. Hasn't done anything for a couple weeks. He had a nice week 13, a nice week 12. Ownership should be low. It's against the Raiders. I like Jaden Higgins. Don't sleep on Jaden Higgins this week. I like Mason Tipton, assuming he plays. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he plays. I like this New Orleans team in general on the up and up against a New York Jets team that's on the down and down. But Mason Tipton's only 3.2K. There's no Devon Vele now, so he should fill into that role pretty nicely. Maybe even better than Vele was performing. We see Vele is vacating, 6, 5, 8, 7 targets. So somewhere between 5 and 8 targets are going to be vacated here. And, some of it will probably go to Olave. Some of it probably might go to another guy I'm going to talk about. But I would assume a majority or a bulk of it will go to Tipton. So we should see something like 4+ targets. And, getting 4 targets, we see here, not great production, but if he gets that touchdown, if he catches a ball for, 40+ yards, now we're talking a different story at 3.2K for sure. Juju Smith-Schuster. Oh my goodness. In the year 2025. Yes. We like Juju Smith-Schuster, who should naturally, step into the X role for Rashee Rice. Should get the end of work. And we know Minshew, like I said before, does okay with that kind of work. Should be pretty heavily targeted, I would think. He's 3K. We saw early in the season without Rashee Rice, there is production here. We can kind of, I wouldn't say bank on. We can pencil him in for like 6 DK points at least, which isn't going to sink you at 3K. So I think he's a very smart play. And then at tight end, I only have one guy, and you probably guessed it at this point if you've been listening intently. But if you haven't, I'll tell you. It is my guy, Juwan Johnson, at 4K. I think he's going to go very overlooked. Still very much involved in this offense. Been very quiet for a month or so. But we know he popped off earlier this season. And I don't think a 12.3x value is out of the question. Just needs that touchdown to really hit value for us. And that offense is on the up and up. I like it. Game stacks. I think the most popular game stack is very clearly going to be the Pittsburgh-Detroit game. Oh, I didn't mention weather. As far as weather goes, there's really nothing of note so far. Of course, that can always change. So definitely tune into your weather broadcasts or wherever you get your information for that. I'll be updating people, on the YouTube video and in the Discord for things that are going to be changing. But Pittsburgh-Detroit should be, it's in the dome anyways, and it should be a popular game to stack, I would think. Lots of pieces there to go ahead and grab. Cincinnati-Miami is a game I'm not really interested in stacking, but I could see why people will be stacking it. You got Jamar Chase, you got Devin Achane, you got some very clear top dogs there. You got Waller, of course. People are going to like. People are going to probably play Burrow. 6.5K. I don't want any part of that. I think he might hit value for you there, but I don't want to do that. No. Chase Brown's a decent piece. Waddle's a decent piece. So people will stack that. I'm not really interested in that one. Chargers at Dallas. I believe this is actually the highest total on the slate. So people will want to stack this. I'm not all that interested in it, honestly. So the 2 games I do want to stack that I think are going to be pretty contrarian are this Falcons-Cardinals game. Already mentioned, I like to stack the passing game because everyone's going to have Bijan, which means nobody's going to have the passing game. They might have Pitts. Pitts should be very popular. But Drake London, no one's going to have him. No one's going to have Kirk Cousins. It's a good matchup, though. Very possibly 40+ points coming from this Atlanta Falcons team. Just because the Cardinals are so bad defensively. And then the Arizona side, like I said, not a lot I like there, but you can certainly bring it back. If you can get to Trey McBride with that, salary, if some value opens up, Trey McBride suddenly becomes very viable. You could go Marvin Harrison. You can go Michael Wilson. My personal favorite piece of this whole offense is Michael Carter. So I don't think you need to have a bring back here, but if you wanted to, I think that's the guy I would go with. And then the other game I want to stack here that's going to be contrarian, I believe, is Tampa Bay, Carolina. And look, I want to stack this Tampa Bay team. I want to stack Mike Evans, and then maybe like Ted McMillan can come back. You could get to Egbuka. Don't really like the tight ends a whole lot here. I think you can stack Bucky Irving. You could go Rika Dowdle or Chuba Hubbard. And given their price difference, I may lean Chuba here because neither have been very impressive. So, I'd want to go spend a little less there. So I think that's a interesting game to stack. Who are my top plays for the week? Who am I getting into most of my lineups right now? Let's see if you can guess. At QB, Tyler Shuck. Let's see. I'll have 6 lineups because I've got the 5 entry and a single entry. I also have a free entry, but I'm not going to count. I never count extra entries in this kind of thing. But in the 6 lineups, I do count. Probably half of them are going to be Tyler Shuck stacks. So yeah, that's how highly I think of it. At the running back position, I mean, it's the most pointed thing I said on this podcast at this point. Quinshon Judkins, overlooked. Offensive line getting healthy. We saw early in the season what that looked like. Buffalo, team you run against. Love this spot for him. Jahmyr Gibbs. If I could spell correctly. Jahmyr Gibbs. Of the spend-up running backs, I love for him to go off here against Pittsburgh. In a game that the Lions absolutely need to win. Need their people to show out. Was absolutely a shell of himself last week. Give me all of Jahmyr Gibbs. DK Metcalf. Just think the price compared to what he's going to be in this very important game for Pittsburgh is too low. Very clearly too low. And then the last guy I want to slide in as a must play. I have a lot of them. Juwan Johnson. Just think, ownership's going to be concentrated on like 3 or 4 guys. Pitts, Kelsey, Fannin, some Schultz probably. And I'm going even a little cheaper than that. And I think I'm getting the same floor as those guys, to be honest with you. Arguably, you could say Pitts has a higher floor. But he's also 1K more. So I like the savings there. So, Tyler Shuck, Quinshon Judkins, Jahmyr Gibbs, DK Metcalf, and Juwan Johnson are the guys I want to jam into as many lineups as possible this week. Let's go ahead and fill this out for you guys and see where we end up. With Shuck being my QB, I want to get Chris Olave. If you want to bring it back with a jet, you can. I don't think you have to, but you can for certainly. Adonai Mitchell is an obvious choice here at 4,500. Or you can go with John Mechie at 4K. But they're going to have Brady Cook throwing to them. So I'm not in love with this play. He did not terribly last week. 33 attempts, 66.7% completion. Only 176 yards, though. Only 5 yards per throw. He had a 25-yard throw. He had 1 touchdown. He threw 3 interceptions. So, not a great first showing. But that could always turn around. So, you can go with a bring back if you want to. I don't think I personally want to go that direction. We could go Sutton here. I'm not going to go Addison. I don't think I want to go Addison. You know what? I want to go Juju. I think Juju is a fantastic option here as well. Defense, I always want to go with the lowest salary. That's not going to sound negative. For me this week, after just looking at this so much, I think that's going to be the Titans. We do have Juju here. I think you can still play the Titans with Juju. If you don't want to play the Titans, you can play the Bengals. It's Miami with Ewers back there. A lot of uncertainty there. And that leaves us with 8.7K. And I know just off the top of my head who I can fit there. And I can fit Mr. Bijan Robinson. And yeah, I'm totally fine with that, of course. So I think you can have a very nice lineup here with those quote unquote core plays. I don't like to call them core plays because it's not like I have to play those guys or anything like that. But those are the guys I'm playing in most of my lineups at this point. And that could change if value opens up or anything. So stick with me. Follow me on the Twitter at that name right there, at DataDrivenOMS, at DataDrivenOMS. Go ahead and give a like on this video. Drop a comment. Let me know you're around. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Get in the Discord for the Old Man Squad. But hey, guys, until next time, go get that money.